The wine glass clinked softly against the edge of my plate as I tilted it, watching the burgundy swirl like it had secrets. I mean, you were my second choice anyway, I said, too casually, the kind of line you toss like confetti and pretend isn't laced with shards. Across the table, Eric froze. Not dramatically, just completely still. Fork in midair, eyes fixed on me with that look. Not shock, not anger, hurt. He blinked once, then smiled. Barely. That's so? I shrugged. Just a joke. A flicker of silence passed between us, then the low scrape of his knife against ceramic. I looked away, past him to the table in the corner where some college-aged guy was watching us, laughing, phone in his hand. I didn't think much of it. Not until the next morning. My phone was buzzing before I even opened my eyes. Texts, missed calls, mentions, a friend sent the link. Wife publicly humiliates husband, calls him second choice on date night. The title stung more than the comments. Divorce him, King. She's definitely cheating. She's the reason men are afraid of marriage. I watched the video in silence. I hated the way I laughed in it, sharp, hollow, like I was already defending something I hadn't admitted. Eric didn't say a word that day, or the next, but he started flipping his phone over when I walked into the room, stopped kissing me goodbye. You okay? I asked once after dinner. He paused at the sink. Yeah, just tired. But he didn't look tired. He looked gone. And still, no mention of the video. None. Because some things don't need to be said when they've already gone viral. The silence wasn't sudden. It crept in, like damp under the wallpaper, slow, invisible, until one day the whole wall peels off and you realize it's been rotting for months. Eric still came home at 6. Still set his keys in the dish. Still asked if the kids ate. Still folded his shirts the same way. But something had shifted. Or maybe it had been shifting for a while, and I was just too tired to notice. I wiped down the kitchen counter one evening, hands moving in circles, scrubbing the same spot again and again. Dinner's on the stove, I said without looking up. He didn't respond, just toed off his shoes and moved past me like a shadow. I glanced back. You okay? He nodded. Yeah, just tired. Always tired. That was the new answer. Like he thought if he said it enough, I'd stop asking. I started testing boundaries, throwing out little grenades to see if he'd flinch. You know, Alex used to cook on Thursdays, without being asked. No reaction. Maybe I should have gone with him. Still nothing. Once, after a long day of screaming kids and burnt rice, I muttered loud enough for him to hear. At least he had a sense of humor. Eric didn't turn, didn't sigh. Just quietly took the trash out and left the door open behind him. I stared at that open door for too long. Was I trying to push him? Or punish him for not pulling me closer? Later that night, I found him sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling through something. He quickly locked the screen when I walked in. Who's Katie? The question slipped out before I could stop it. He blinked up at me. She's a coworker. A pause. Why? I sat down on the attic floor, the letter shaking slightly in my hand. We never really had a clean ending, Alex and I. My parents hated how fast I fell for him, thought he wasn't ambitious enough. Eric, on the other hand, came with structure, with plans, with approval. And still, after all these years, I'd written to Alex like we were paused, not ended. Why? Maybe because I never truly closed the door. Maybe because somewhere, buried under mom schedules and laundry loads, a part of me still clung to the question, what if? The next letter was shorter. Do you think you would have noticed? The slow unraveling? I wonder if I ever really became someone, or if I just disappeared into roles. Wife, mother, manager of all things forgotten. I closed my eyes, pressing the paper to my chest. Downstairs, the front door clicked. Eric was home, late again. He didn't call out, just moved around with the careful quiet of someone who didn't want to disturb anything or anyone. I heard the fridge open, the soft hiss of a bottle. A single glass clinked on the counter. I stayed in the attic because I couldn't look at him. Not with Alex's name still ink-wet in my memory. Not when the gap between who I was and who I pretended to be felt like an ocean I didn't have the strength to cross anymore. When I finally came down, Eric was sitting at the kitchen table, eyes on his phone, shoulders slouched. "Find what you were looking for?" he asked without looking up. I froze. Did he know? Could he? "In the attic," I said, voice dry. "Old stuff." He nodded slowly. "You were up there a while." I opened the fridge, pretending to search for something. Just needed some air, or less of it, maybe. He didn't laugh, not even a twitch. "You ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" I asked, still staring at the shelves. There was a pause. Then, "All the time." I shut the door. "Then why do we keep pretending it's ours?" His eyes finally met mine. "Because it's easier than starting over." Silence pressed in, thick and uneasy. My hand drifted to the counter, bracing myself against something invisible. "I used to write letters," I said, barely above a whisper. "To someone I knew before you." He blinked. "You sent them?" "No, I just needed to say things. To someone who might have listened." His jaw tightened. "So that's where you go? When you're not really here?" I didn't answer. Because he wasn't wrong. But I didn't know how to tell him I felt like wallpaper in my own house, fading, ignored, curled at the edges. He stood slowly, walked past me. His shoulder brushed mine just enough to remind me of what we used to be. Not enough to make me believe it was still there. At the staircase, he paused. "Do you miss him?" I turned, caught in the question. "I miss who I was when I thought I could be anything." He didn't respond, just climbed the stairs like someone carrying too much silence. Later that night, I pulled the letters from the shoebox again. I didn't reread them, just sat with them, with the weight of unsent words and the woman who had written them. I thought they were harmless. But now I wondered, was writing to someone else while sleeping next to Eric each night just another kind of betrayal? Not of him, of myself. The toothbrush was blue with a frayed edge. The kind of thing you stop noticing until it vanishes. Eric had packed light for the 2-night conference in Greenville. Same routine as always. Navy suitcase, travel-sized cologne, laptop charger. But when I unpacked groceries the next morning and saw the empty spot in the bathroom, a cold prickle slid down my neck. He'd never taken his toothbrush before. I stared at the ceramic cup beside the sink like it might explain itself. It didn't. The kids were watching cartoons downstairs. I was supposed to be defrosting chicken for dinner. Instead, I sat on the closed toilet seat, staring at that stupid absence. The next day, by chance or fate or something crueler, I saw his car. We were already running late to Ethan's birthday party, the one with the rented pony and the clown who didn't smile. I was cursing traffic when I noticed the black Honda turning off Oak Ridge, a side street I'd never seen him use. At first I thought, no, it can't be. But there it was, same dent by the wheel well, same faded "Life's Good" sticker peeling at the corner of the back windshield. I didn't follow. I had a kid in the car. I had a cake in the trunk. I had excuses not to fall apart. That night, after the kids had collapsed into sugar comas and Eric was catching up on emails in the office, I opened his top drawer, looking for nothing, hoping for something. That's when I found the envelope. It wasn't hidden, just tucked beneath an old checkbook and a charger cord. A child's drawing peeked out, bold crayon strokes and sparkly stickers. "To Daddy, from Lily." My breath caught. I stared at the name like it might rearrange itself. We didn't have a Lily. The drawing was of a house. 2 stick figures held hands in front of it. One had spiky hair, the other had pigtails. Above them, in shaky purple crayon, me plus Daddy. I sat down on the bed. My knees felt wrong, too light to hold me. My fingers trembled as I flipped the picture over. There was a second note, scrawled in a loopy adult hand. Thanks for this weekend. Lily didn't want you to leave. Me neither. Jay, I didn't know a Jay. The room tilted. He came in not 5 minutes later, loosened his tie, gave me that worn-out smile he wore like armor. How was the party? Who's Lily? I asked, voice steadier than I felt. He blinked. What? I held up the drawing. He didn't even try to lie at first, just stared at it like maybe if he looked long enough it would disappear. Finally, she's a friend's daughter. You mean Jeanette's? He flinched. That was it. That one involuntary twitch, like a thread snapping. So she has a name, I whispered. He sat on the edge of the bed, rubbed his face. Amanda. How long? I asked. He didn't answer. The silence was long enough for me to remember all the missed dinners, the late meetings, the hotel receipts I'd once found and believed without asking. I laughed, quiet, bitter. Do they know about us? About your other family? His eyes flicked to mine. She thinks I'm divorced. The room went still. I was going to tell her, he added softer. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. You didn't mean for a second life to just grow out of the ground? I stood. You have a daughter, Eric? His voice cracked. I didn't know for sure at first. We weren't serious, not then. My chest felt hollow. And now? She's 3. 3. That meant the affair started long before the viral video, long before my sarcastic digs. He'd already begun the split. And I was still patching up cracks with apologies and casseroles. How many birthdays have you missed here to celebrate over there? He didn't reply. I turned to the mirror. I didn't recognize my reflection. My face looked pale, eyes wide, like a ghost waking up in someone else's home. I don't know who you are anymore, I said. He whispered something I almost didn't catch. I don't think I ever did. He didn't sleep in our bed that night, and I didn't cry. Not then. Because some heartbreaks don't bleed. They calcify. They grow roots around your ribs until breathing becomes a quiet act of survival. That night, I sat in the kids' room after they fell asleep, stroking Ethan's hair, listening to the soft rhythm of Mia's breathing. And I made a quiet promise to myself. I would not disappear. Not like wallpaper. Not like furniture. Not like some forgotten woman in someone else's lie. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Not out of anger, out of clarity. Because the moment you discover your life is someone's side plot, you either collapse or you rewrite the ending. The lawn was neatly trimmed, the welcome mat clean, not a single toy out of place except the bright yellow tricycle. Small, plastic, with one wheel tilted like it had just been abandoned mid-play. That tricycle did something to me. Not because of what it was, but because I recognized it. We'd had the same one, years ago. Ethan's first. I remembered holding the handlebars steady while he figured out how to push himself forward. Now I was standing on the porch of another woman's home. Another life. Another version of him. She opened the door before I could even straighten my thoughts. Wide eyes, soft features, a baby squirming on her hip. Her mouth parted slightly, confused. Curious. You're Amanda? I finished for her. The pause between us stretched too long. Then she blinked like the name had punched her. You're his ex-wife, right? I tried to find the right version of yes. The one that didn't sound like a scar. I nodded. She stepped halfway into the doorway, blocking my view like she suddenly wasn't sure what this conversation was going to cost her. He told me you two had been separated for years. That the divorce was already done. My lips parted, but nothing came out. She continued, her voice quieter now. He said your kids were from another life, that he only saw them occasionally. That you knew about me. I didn't. Not until 2 weeks ago when I found Lily's drawing. To Daddy. I glanced behind her, unable to stop myself. The house was too familiar in all the wrong ways. Wooden toys, play mats, faint echoes of a child's laughter. And then I saw the shelf. 2 photos. Eric holding Lily, her tiny arms curled around his neck like he was her entire world. And beside it, a different shelf entirely. Eric with Ethan, our son. His eyes sparkling, unaware that in this home, he was the past. Not one family, not even one wall. Separate frames, separate timelines. I swallowed, hard. He split us, like we were eras. She turned, saw what I was looking at. Her shoulders slumped. He told me you were gone. I didn't realize I was crying until I tasted salt. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't. He always made it sound like you left him, like he was rebuilding. I believe you. And I did. There was something raw about her, something too open to be deceitful. We stood in silence, strangers connected by the same architect of false intimacy. You loved him? I asked, not expecting an answer, not sure why I needed one. She hesitated. I think I did. But now I don't know who I loved. Neither did I. I should go. She reached out, paused, and dropped her hand. If I'd known... But that's the thing, I said quietly. None of us did. A small sound cut through the tension. Lily, babbling, her voice clear. Dada. Jeanette flinched like it burned. I turned away before she could say anything else. The porch steps creaked under my weight. The air felt heavier, not from humidity but truth. A truth that had lived beneath the surface for years, quiet and insistent. The door shut behind me. Not like a slam, like a final sentence. But this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something else. Not healing, not yet. But recognition. I wasn't just the woman left behind. I was the one walking away. Finally. On my own terms. Without apology. And maybe, just maybe, that was the only kind of justice I was ever going to get. The room where we sat for mediation smelled faintly of stale coffee and fear. I remember the way the lawyer kept tapping his pen against the folder, like he was waiting for a bomb to go off. Eric was sitting across from me, legs crossed, unreadable. The calm of someone holding cards no one else knew existed. I'd like a paternity test for Ethan, he said, without blinking. I laughed, a dry, brittle sound that didn't reach my chest. You're kidding. No. My mouth opened, then closed. You think I... He didn't answer. Just stared at me with that same blank calm he'd worn for months. Like I wasn't a person anymore, just a series of decisions he regretted. I never cheated, I said. Never. Then the test won't be a problem. It wasn't the request that shattered me. It was the implication. The suggestion that I, the woman who gave up her career, her sleep, her youth to raise those kids, might have lied about their father. But I agreed, because I had nothing to hide. And then the envelope came. Inconclusive. That word landed like glass in my throat. I sat on the kitchen floor after the kids went to bed, reading the lab report over and over, searching for the crack in the science. There was none. I hadn't cheated. But now I couldn't prove it. That night, my phone rang. It was late. The kind of late when only bad news calls. Mom? A pause. Too long. I was going to tell you, she said. My heart tightened. Tell me what? Her voice trembled. When Ethan was born, he had to be taken to NICU. You remember? Of course I remember. There was confusion. With the bassinets. They wheeled in the wrong baby just for a minute. I noticed, but the nurse said it was fine. That they corrected it. But, Amanda, I think they didn't. I think... Her breath hitched. I think Ethan was switched. The silence on the line was so loud I had to press the phone tighter to hear anything beyond the ringing in my own ears. He's my son, I said quietly. I held him. I nursed him. I know, honey. But he might not be Eric's. I felt like I was falling sideways. Not from betrayal, not this time, but from chaos. A kind of cosmic error. A hospital name tag that slipped. A moment that reshaped our lives without our consent. You knew, I whispered. All these years, and you said nothing? I thought it would cause too much pain. You were happy. You had a family. What good would it have done? My hands were trembling. He is mine, I said. No matter what a paper says. I never doubted that. But Eric would. And suddenly, it wasn't about who slept with whom. It was about who gets to claim the truth when reality gets bent by a system that doesn't always care about people. Ethan was mine. In every way that mattered. But that night, as I watched him sleep, his chest rising gently under his Spider-Man blanket, I realized that truth might not be enough for Eric. Not anymore. He'd always been the kind of guy who laughed a little too hard at things that weren't funny. Nick, the friend who called sarcasm his love language and loyalty a flexible trait. He was at the dinner that night, sitting 2 tables over, third wheel to someone else's breakup in progress, phone angled just right. I thought it was funny, he said later, like humor was a get-out-of-jail card. You looked like someone who could handle it. I remembered the way he grinned as the clip blew up online. How he tagged it with savage wife moment and added a popcorn emoji. The views climbed. So did the comments. I scrolled for hours that night, watching strangers dissect my marriage like it was reality TV. He didn't think to ask what happened after the laughter. He didn't see the way Eric stopped coming home on time, how he started sleeping with his back to me, phone face down like a secret. He didn't see me standing in the kitchen the next morning, holding my mug with both hands because they wouldn't stop shaking. And then, months later, after the lawyers, after the papers, after the final handshake of 2 people who once promised forever, Nick sent a text. You okay? That was it. 3 words. No apology, no recognition of what he'd started. I stared at the message for a long time. What do you say to someone who poured gasoline on a moment and lit it with a smirk? I thought of replying. Thought of saying, no, I'm not okay. I've got 2 kids who ask why daddy lives somewhere else now, and I still sleep on only one side of the bed out of habit. But instead, I deleted it. Not to punish him. Not to prove a point. But because sometimes silence is the loudest answer you have. Because when someone reduces your life to a punchline, you don't owe them the rest of your story. The chairs were cold, the kind that make you sit straighter than you want to. The clerk called our names like we were numbers in line. And still, Eric never looked up. He sat across from me, pen in hand, posture calm. Not stiff, not angry. Just done. The lawyer pushed the documents forward. Initial here and here. Eric flipped through the pages like they were nothing more than a phone contract. Then he reached for the pen. You're not going to say anything? I whispered, the words barely audible. His eyes didn't lift. What would I even say? A pause hung between us, thick with the ghosts of every birthday, argument, late-night apology we'd ever shared. I swallowed. You didn't even fight for them, I said. The kids. He sighed. I'm not disappearing. I just didn't want to make this harder than it has to be. It already was. The judge's voice droned on about custody agreements, visitation terms, schedules, and rotating holidays. None of it felt real. It sounded like someone else's life, someone else's goodbye. I glanced over at him. He was still staring straight ahead, as if I wasn't there at all. Was this what we'd become? Two people who used to trace each other's every thought, now unable to hold a single glance? And then I realized we hadn't seen each other, really seen each other in years. Not without a screen, not without a wall. And that was the truest ending of all. The fridge hummed low, steady, the only sound in the kitchen besides the soft clink of a spoon in a cereal bowl. Mia was upstairs, humming to herself. Ethan sat at the table, swinging his legs, spoon in hand, eyes fixed on the cartoon flickering from the living room. He didn't ask for Eric anymore, not as often, and I didn't fill the silence with lies, not like before. There was no grand closure, no last-minute knock on the door, just space and quiet, and days that came and went like tides, predictable, necessary, sometimes heavy. I found the letter in the shoebox while reorganizing the closet. Dated a week after the final court date. My handwriting, steadier than I remembered. I thought loving someone meant staying. But maybe sometimes it means letting go of the story you thought you were in. My fingers hesitated over the edge of the paper. For a second, I almost slipped it into an envelope. But I didn't. Because I wasn't that version of me anymore. The one who needed someone else to validate the ache, the loss, the maybe. I folded the letter gently, tucked it back into the box. Then I made breakfast, and chose to stay in the story I was finally writing for myself. You want to know the worst part? It wasn't the affair. It wasn't the hidden family or the hospital mix-up. It wasn't watching my life unravel in the comment section of a viral joke. It was the quiet truth. I stopped choosing him a long time ago, and he stopped choosing me. We just kept showing up, out of habit, out of fear, pretending the silence between us was still something called love. I don't think this is working anymore, he'd said. And the cruelest part? I didn't argue. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know what we were trying to save anymore. So here I am, not waiting to be chosen, not chasing what cracked long before the fall. Just me, with my kids, with a name I no longer apologize for. And for once, that's enough.